Hey everyone, my name is Rich, and this is episode number 57 of Rich Talks Records. And it's a beautiful Sunday morning, and it is Mother's Day, and there's nobody more appropriate to do a video about on Mother's Day than, let me just check my notes, than Harry Nilsson. Oh, that was a bit of fun, wasn't it? So anyway, yes, this is episode number 57 Rich Talks Records, and yes, we are talking about Harry Nilsson, specifically, depending on how you keep count, either his third or his fifth album. That's the thing with Harry, you'd never really know. But 1969's, simply put, Harry. I think he was still going by Nilsson at this point and not Harry Nilsson. So, or I guess, did he always? I don't pay attention to these things. But yeah, the first album is sort of more of a compilation. And then there are the first, what are sort of also known as the first two albums, and then this one. It all does become the Skidoo soundtrack, and then this one. So it does all get a little confusing. And I don't have a terribly deep backstory with Harry Nilsson. Quite simply put, my father had the Without You single, which I thought was amazing. I remember listening to it in my dad's 45s, you know, along with like ABBA's SOS and Hot Chocolate's You Sexy Thing. These are, and then like all of the Back to the 50s compilations that he had. Like, where are they? This one, Solid Gold Party Rock, and America's Top Rock. That's some of like the very first music I ever remember hearing. So jump forward years later, I'm 14, 15 years old, completely obsessed with the Beatles and John and Yoko. And I find out that in 1974, John Lennon produced an album with this guy that sang Without You. And I was like, I'm all in, of course, absolutely. Another funny side note, as far as random 45s that my dad had this sort of throwback 20s song that obviously I knew it wasn't from the 20s, that I also loved. Oh Babe, What Would You Say? Loved it. It was great. I remember being like 7 years old and listening to it. And it turns out that was in the Mark Lewison Beatles recording sessions book. I found out that was Norman Normal Smith, Hurricane Smith. I would have never had the slightest idea. So another weird random 45 with a Beatles connection. So, but I bought Pussycats. I found it on vinyl at the same record store where I bought most of my Lennon bootlegs, and where I still go sometimes. And I fell in love with the record. That is also the album that kickstarted my whole fandom and interest in Bob Dylan, with the really great cover of Subterranean Homesick Blues that I just thought was absolutely amazing. So anyway, and from there, you know, I would just sort of randomly see Nilsson records out there sometimes. So like at one point I just, randomly bought Nilsson Schmilsson. Did I pick up any others? I honestly, I just don't remember. But the big ta-da with Harry Nilsson, and I actually don't have the box cover, but the big one was the Andrew Sandoval helmed release of all of the RCA albums, and everything was remastered. There's a wealth of outtakes, and even now it's kind of one of the only places you can get like hard data on when things were recorded, what the order of stuff was, because kind of as everything with Harry, all of it's non-linear. So this is the booklet for it, and that box set is still available. I really can't rate it enough. It is just amazing. It is how a box set should be done. Andrew Sandoval, I talked about him in the Love video. He had helmed the Forever Changes reissue. Well, and I guess the second album as well. But I called in that video. I called him one of the angels of rock and roll. I really hold to that. He has started a book company, Beatland Books. They do really amazing work. Like he is amazing, and then he did and he had helmed all of those incredible Monkees reissues. So the Nilsson set sort of came out in the mix of the big deluxe reissues of the multi-disc reissues of the Monkees albums, that I think that's the canon to me for them. So Andrew Sandoval, like, when I found out that he was going to be doing a Nilsson project, I was like, this is going to be incredible. And then it was. So it's like one of the best box sets you could ever buy. Like, if you don't own it and you're interested at all in Nilsson, like, it's not a complete one-stop shop, because then there's still the Popeye stuff, there's Flash Harry, and there's the recordings that predate the RCA. So what's on the first album, which is sort of a compilation of singles and other stuff. So it's not a complete one-stop shop. Oh, and then there's the posthumous record, which I'll be honest, I sort of have mixed feelings on. But while it may not be a one-stop shop, it's going to get you the bulk of what you need to know and what you need to hear, and the really essential core stuff. There's a biography of Nilsson that I still haven't read yet, and honestly, I was going to hold off. The reason I haven't done a video so far about Harry is because I've always been meaning to read the biography and just haven't gotten around to it. And I've been sort of looking at the schedule. This is the last couple months have just been a really crazy busy time for me, and the next couple weeks are still going to sort of be crazy busy. I actually have a whole list of single album reviews, kind of like this, where I'm just going to be focusing on one album. That's basically going to run through a good chunk of the summer, and I'm really excited to get into those. And this is kind of the first one. So even though I haven't read the biography, I certainly have Andrew Sandoval's copious notes in the box set booklet. And of course this, I've shown this before. Who is Harry Nilsson and why is everybody talking about him? The exemplary documentary that came out a few years ago. This is for free with ads out on YouTube. It's on Tubi. It's on probably Amazon. But you can go watch this for free. I'll link to it. The YouTube iteration of it. Like, this is as good as it gets. And the literally, like, the lone flaw is that Ringo didn't do an interview for it. Other than that, it's as spotless of a documentary as you could ever possibly have. So Nilsson was sort of a big question mark to me until I got the box set. It filled out a lot of albums I didn't have or just had never seen. And that was one of the funny things. So, like, the Rolling Stone album guide, for instance, I think had like 2 entries. So albums like That's the Way It Is or Sandman, I simply had never heard of. I didn't know that they existed until I got that box set. So that was like, as far as Harry Nilsson is concerned, that was sort of like the monolith falling out of the sky, right? Or not falling out of the sky, but the monolith existing one day and beholding it. And there was kind of infinite information on it that one could divine. So why am I reviewing this album? Nilsson Schmilsson, I think, objectively is his greatest album. As a vocalist, A Little Touch of Schmilsson in the Night is also another arguably high watermark, especially him as an interpreter. As far as albums that Pussycats is always going to have a place in my heart. As far as I guess I'm just not going to count the first album. I'm just going to refer to the first 2 as the second and the third. As far as personal favorites, subjectively, my favorite, or the one that I think is the greatest subjectively, is the second album, Aerial Ballet. This is absolutely incredible, and this album has great resonance in my life, and especially during dun 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 the divorce years. Yes, that old ghost yet again. I particularly bonded with this album during that, and the song Bath. Driving around, I had a a 7 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. dentist appointment. I was out of there by 8, driving around on empty roads, sun just way up in the sky, cloudless. It was cold as hell, and it was like 10 degrees, and it was just the sun, and the streets were bleached white with salt, and there was nobody on the road, and just driving and listening to the song Bath, and having the sense that I did want to continue living. And it was because of Bath, but also by extension, the rest of this album. So this album has great personal significance for me. And yet, the album that I listen to the most, the one that I think works best as an album, is this one. There's a very, very, very unique, special cohesion, and if you will, magic to this album that Harry pulled together. The alchemical intelligence of it, because it has a few outtakes. There's from previous albums. There's covers. It is a little bit of a patchwork, and we'll get into that. And then, the bulk of it was newly recorded, but he somehow pulls all of this into a cohesive whole that, interestingly, feels like the third part of a trilogy. Here we go. With Pandemonium Shadow Show and Aerial Ballet. This feels like the third final epilogue installment and the grown-up, mature, fully realized version of those two albums. So it works on that level. But the thing with Harry is, and Harry's discography is, it's all sort of circles within circles within circles within circles. But the thing is, this is also then the second in a sort of staggering 5-album run for somebody who had one hit single and one other hit single that he had written for the Three Dog Night covered. This is number 2 of a staggering 5-album transition run leading up to Nilsson Schmilsson. So there's the Skidoo soundtrack, there's Nilsson Sings Newman. So for somebody who is known as an emerging singer-songwriter and an increasingly important part of the singer-songwriter movement, especially as it was like being commodified by the music industry and being something that was like, this is the direction that music is going in. What does Harry do? He does an all covers album. So he does this Otto Preminger soundtrack. He makes this album. He does Nilsson Sings Newman, which is all covers of another emerging singer-songwriter, Randy Newman. So that is, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Oh, The Point, which is the soundtrack for the film that Harry conceptualized and came up with. And then the world's first remix album, and I always get the title bungled, the Aerial Pandemonium Ballet. I can never get that right. I had to look it up. And that is this weird, I don't know, compilation album, remix album, smashed together, as the title indicates, of either the first and second or second and third albums that he ever made. So there's this bizarre 5-album run, and then he goes and makes Nilsson Schmilsson, which has his biggest hit. And, it is also pretty random that Harry's 2 biggest hits are also songs that he didn't write, and his biggest hit song that he did write was sang by Three Dog Night. None of that makes sense. And that's sort of what you're in for with Harry, and that's sort of what you're in for on this album. What this album reminds me of, and what Harry's best work reminds me of, but especially this album, what it really reminds me of most as to make an album to film connection, is this, which in some ways is F for Fake by Orson Welles, the last film that he completed in his lifetime, which in some ways is my favorite Orson Welles movie. I know that I always say The Trial is his greatest, And then there's Touch of Evil and obviously Citizen Kane. No, Citizen Kane is not overrated. Oh my God. What the fuck is wrong with people? Anyway, but this, F for Fake, this is the thing with Orson Welles, like Harry, right? And the Beatles have that, and I suppose Dylan has a bit of that. Brian Wilson has that. There's an aspect of sleight of hand. And even when you know the trick is coming, and you might even know the mechanics of the trick, you're still fooled by it. It still gets you every time, right? So people like Harry, the Beatles, Orson Welles, I would say Muhammad Ali, they operate in some sort of odd, highly charming, highly beguiling realm where even when you know it's coming, they still get you. And this is pulled together from existing documentary footage. Wells does this sort of faux confessional. There's fake documentary footage. This is such a odd assemblage of a film. It's a scrapbook. Wells considered it an essay, a film essay, and you could also, though, consider it something of a scrapbook of a film, because Wells also reflects on his personal history. Like, he's then very self-consciously playing Orson Welles. Then Orson is actually in some of the original documentary footage that he himself wasn't shooting. Again, layers within layers. And that's sort of what this is. And the sleight of hand works every time. It doesn't matter how many times you listen to it. It doesn't matter how many times you watch this. And again, same thing with the Beatles. Same thing with Ali. You know he's going to do the shuffle, or he's going to make certain moves, and yet he still figures it out and lands the shots. And it's kind of like, how did he do that, The next thing I wanted to touch on was just simply the state of Harry Nilsson in 1969. The state of Harry Nilsson in 1969. He was already a very different artist than he had been just the year or two before. So he'd already had his big hit single with Everybody's Talking at Me. And by this point, by early 1969, when he started recording this, he had already been to England and met the Beatles and stayed with the Beatles. The Beatles famously, when they were doing the Apple launch, is anybody watching this who doesn't know this? But John and Paul declared Nilsson as our favorite group, and he got in very tight with the Beatles. I forget he attended a session at Abbey Road. I don't remember what the song was anymore, but this was the beginning of a great transformation. And part of that transformation is the man who had really helmed and who had really, I don't know what the word would be, the Rick Gerard, the producer of the first and second albums, his influence is so monumental, and his taste level is incredible. And what he did with Harry's work, he cultivated Harry's songs and fleshed them out in really, really beautiful ways with production, editing, orchestrations. I mean, his work, he was the George Martin, and his work is absolutely exemplary. Other than a few older recordings, Rick Gerard was gone by this point, and this was Harry now striking out on his own and being more of an auteur, I suppose. Though those first two albums are pretty auteur-like, but I dare say it is maybe something of a shared vision with Rick Gerard, because his aesthetics really do inform things. But as a sort of a statement of intent, I don't know if you can see that, but it is a Nilsson House production. And everything about this album, the cover, the very strange story, Lennon-esque story on the back about the magic lamp, and then just the fact that it's these sepia tones, and that the album, while not necessarily specifically a concept album, this is sort of what the album is like. The album sort of exists in that sort of graduate, sort of slightly out of time from the rest of the 60s, but sort of viewing it from afar and sort of commenting on it and being slightly bemused in a similar way that you see in some of the songs of Paul Simon from this time, and then over in England definitely from Ray Davies. Ray Davies kind of being the poet laureate of being somewhat detached from the 60s and being, again, sort of confused by all of it in a way. But I feel like the album artwork is just such a absolutely perfect reflection of the contents of this record. And in a way, this is one of the great rainy day albums. This is extraordinary music to listen to at 10 in the morning on a rainy day in the weekend or something. And this is really the soundtrack for that. There is a cohesive vibe and mood and temperament that is consistent throughout the album, even though the album, as always with Harry, has a very, very, very wide range. And I will get to that now. The thing about Harry that I always have found interesting is, again, sort of circles within circles within circles within circles. Harry is such an odd combination of different artistic temperaments with different artistic aims, and yet somehow these things don't clash. They sort of all function in harmony with each other, more or less, and don't really stick out at right angles. Or at least they really don't. I think the first time the seams really show on that front is the Son of Schmilson album. And I think that has more to do with Richard Perry than it does with Nilsson necessarily. But the thing about Harry is that Harry, like Paul McCartney, especially Paul's early stuff, and like Brian Wilson, especially Smiley Smile up to Sunflower, Harry is one of the world's all-time great miniaturists. And like John Lennon, he's fundamentally a collage artist. So there is this miniaturist. And when I was a child, going to the Art Institute, the miniatures rooms were my favorite part of going to the Art Institute. Also, the armor rooms were the halls, which that's all been remodeled now. But those halls you would walk down of all the knights and the swords and scabbards and shields and helmets. But then you would go from that into the rooms of miniatures. And that was always fascinating to me. So it doesn't, in a weird way, it doesn't surprise me that as an adult I would find that appealing, and that I would find like Wild Honey and Friends and those records, well, that I would listen to those more than I listen to Pet Sounds, quite honestly. There's something really, really interesting about all of that to me. You could make the argument that side 2 of Abbey Road is kind of Paul's ultimate artistic statement in a weird way. It's one of the ultimate extensions of his aesthetics, and Harry is right up there with them as this sort of ADHD, incredible melodies, incredible, beautiful musical ideas. There's a bittersweet quality to Harry, and the transitory, ethereal nature of his writing. And Brian Wilson in the documentary calls him an experiment, a melodic experimentalist, I think is how he phrased it. That it's experimental, but it's also highly melodic, highly beautiful, and it's not really abstract or challenging in its beauty, especially with that voice. It is just straight up beautiful. You don't have to really think about it. You don't have to process it. You don't have to get on its wavelength or come to it very, very much. It comes out at you and to you and within you and without you, man. But you get what I'm saying. But it's all very momentary, and it's like holding on to water. It just doesn't last in your hand. And it's very, very interesting. The other thing that's interesting, so in that sense, I think that where John and Paul function so well together is I think that really what John was for Paul was really an editor. Because if you look at Paul's ideas, and John talked about this with yesterday, that it doesn't sort of really say anything. It's just sort of these fleeting images, and you fill in the rest of the story yourself. What's interesting about like John as a solo artist is John's stuff is all solid forms. Those are, and also interestingly, John and Lou Reed are, for as much as they have reputations as experimentalists, really, they're solid form guys. They're verse, chorus, verse guys. Those songs are not, the song forms aren't super out of left field. They're pretty rock solid. Dylan is like that. And yet you have these other guys who are also, you know, and there's references made to, with Harry, like to Stephen Foster. There's sort of the Cole Porter thing where it is sort of informed, you know, Brian Wilson with like the Four Freshmen, Paul like with standards and big band stuff. There is that sort of more fleeting jazz composition thing where you have like a verse or two, the lyrics are more, for lack of a better way of putting it, more for sort of like sensual effect or creating an effect or a mood, as opposed to like a deeper examination of something. And you have the introduction of the theme, the repetition of the theme, and then it goes off to, you know, like in jazz compositions, except they weren't functioning in a jazz idiom. So instead you just have these ethereal, beautiful moments. But where he was different than Paul is Harry is also, in some ways, as much as he's sort of an odd combination of both Brian and Paul, he's also the closest anyone has ever been to being a combination of John and Paul, because he has the artistic temperament in a way of John, where there's the sharp knife in there, and there's a core of emotional intensity, whereas Paul, you know, even at his most experimental, Paul is sort of well adjusted to life and doesn't really want to like push humanity all that much or push back at humanity. I mean, I always thought it was interesting that in the middle of Magical Mystery Tour, like Paul's improvisation is like, they're on the Doonesbury Road and they're having a wonderful time. Like, John would never say that. John would intimate that there's something wrong or there's something strange happening. But Paul, they're having a wonderful time. and Harry, that's part of Harry's temperament, is there's always the edge. It's just that unlike John, he doesn't expose it. So you're not going to get a working class hero. You're not going to get a Ballad of John and Yoko. You're not going to get even a She Said necessarily out of him. The raw exposed nerves don't come out, but boy are they there, and they are like pulsing underneath all of this. So Harry is such a fascinating combination of temperaments, and again, circles within circles, things that are barely subdued. I forget the guy who's interviewed in the documentary, but talks about the song Good Old Desk, where you could think that it's a lovely, charming, odd, slightly quirky, eccentric, jolly little pop song. What an odd song about writing about his desk, his favorite desk. And as the guy points out, I'm sorry, I forget his name. But he's kind of the best interview subject in the movie, so apologies. But he points out Good Old Desk, G-O-D. It's his examination on his relationship with God, right? And Harry does that. There's all these little like puzzles and circles within circles, and you can enjoy it on all these different levels. And again, that's part of the sleight of hand and the magic of Nilsson. So Rick Gerard is gone, and Harry basically records the bulk of this album in January and February at RCA Studios in Hollywood, California, and I guess we will just go from here straight into album talk. Then, yes. So one thing I want to add. So as we move into album talk, I think that this album, and Nilsson in general, if you want to think of it on a spectrum of, there's the classical beauty of Nilsson, and then there's the challenging beauty all the way over on the other spectrum, end of the spectrum, of Tim Buckley and what he was doing, like literally at the same time. And so that's one of the reasons I want to do this video. Maybe someday I will get to the artist that sort of splits the difference, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe he was an American who lived in England. Maybe I might do that next year. Maybe there's 4 albums. I don't know. It'll take a long time to do those, but I'm just planting that little seed. Some of you will know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, the album starts off with the Puppy Song, a Nilsson original, and begins with the opening sort of slightly abstract aphorism. Dreams are, what I always get this wrong, dreams are nothing more than wishes, and a wish is just a dream you wish would come true, which is this great, wonderful, fleeting fragment before it goes into the main point of the song. And kind of like Good Old Desk, it's about having a puppy and how fun it would be to have a dog. And very quickly, in bittersweet, hairy fashion, it very quickly turns on into this, while it is a wonderful sort of jolly Penny Lane-esque song with a super engaging melody and is absolutely beautiful, it of course also then has these hidden, ruminative, pensive depths about the nature of friendship and companionship and the need for human connection. It's extraordinary. You could also think about the relationship that people have with their pets. It sort of goes on, and or the nature of maintaining, well, any sort of relationships. It is an absolute beautiful song, and it's a brilliant song, and Harry sings it. I mean, my God, those melodies and that voice and the occasional double tracking, just amazing. And then the other thing I should say is the sonic landscape of this album is pretty quickly defined. Like Tim Buckley at this time, these are basically small band jazz recordings. It's almost like rock instrumentation, but like a small band jazz recording. And while the sound is full and rich, it is also at the same time spare and could be in a different way taken as a one mic recording from the late 20s. You could sort of envision the alternate reality of hearing these songs in maybe a more big band setting, or hearing it at some late night bar in the East Village at 2 a.m. You can time jump in your mind, and you can hear these songs in different settings and different arrangements. That's also part of the magic of it, and all of that goes to say, as the sleight of hand, that fleeting fragment at the beginning of the song, when Harry circles back to that, and it turns out that the whole song is a circular composition, and Harry comes back to the opening declamatory but wistful, dreams are nothing more than wishes, and a wish is, oh my God, bam, oh my God, that is, it is brutal, it is so, that's the sleight of hand, that's the magic of Harry, and that's the wistfulness and the beauty and the melancholy and the pathos and the sadness all comes flooding through, because the intensity of with which you realize that the singer of the song, the character of the song in first person, is utterly alone, and they don't know how to take steps towards maintaining relationships. It's brutal. And then, as if to up the emotional ante, as if to ratchet it up, Harry, this song has been sort of flirting with sort of songs that got us through the war, sort of wistful 40s sort of balladry. And when Harry starts improving vocally, and the "your wish will come true, your wish will come true," like, that's basically like the Andrew Sisters or something, like, ooh. And so all of a sudden, then it also sort of becomes this generational thing, and people not relating to their parents, and like, it all of a sudden again circles within circles. And that's just the first song. And you look at this cover, and you look at that photo of Harry, and why is it sepia toned? Like, all of a sudden, we're dealing with Peter Bogdanovich level wistfulness, graduate level, like that ending shot in The Graduate where, yeah, they busted out it, but they're in the back of the bus, and now what? Now what? Whoo! Harry at his best contains multitudes. And that's just the first song. So then we get into and also I should say, Rick Gerard is not around, but the arrangements and orchestrations are by George Tipton, who plays a not insignificant role in this masterpiece of an album. And just to be clear, yes, I know I said Aerial Ballet is subjectively maybe his greatest personally, and Nilsson Schmilsson is maybe objectively his greatest, but Pandemonium Shadow Show, Touch of Schmilsson in the Night, I would argue Pussycats, I would definitely say this. These are also masterpieces. I just want to be very, very, very clear about that. So there's, if I refer to this as a masterpiece and you're like, hey, but you said, like, no. This is the absolute top level of this man's extraordinary body of work, and totally unconventional and unpredictable body of work. Anyway, we get into Nobody Cares About the Railroads Anymore. Most of these songs, so these are from the January and February sessions at RCA Studios, just to be clear. And I found one musician's list that it was Larry Knechtel on bass, and I forget who else was playing on it, but I then saw a much longer musicians list, and I wasn't sure if that applied to some of the other recording sessions, so I don't want to put a foot wrong, and I went to go look it back up, and I couldn't find the musicians list. I don't know where the hell I had found it, so I don't want to screw that up and get it wrong, so I'm just going to sort of refrain. I know I tend to mention musicians' names, but I'm going to try to refrain from doing that on this time, because I would rather not put a foot wrong. But Nobody Cares About the Railroads Anymore. Speaking of Peter Bogdanovich, I mean, this is basically Paper Moon. It's extraordinary, beautiful, and out of time. And what a fascinating, strange little composition. And again, about the passage of time, and kind of along the same lines as Last of the Steam Powered Trains for Ray Davies, or Davis. I say Davies. Sorry, but what an absolutely beautiful, beautiful song. And so unconventional, but also that sort of self-consciously, almost sort of ragtime musical setting. Beautiful, and the singing is beautiful, and it's just this amazing little oral cartoon. It's like a late 60s version of a 1910s or 1920s Disney cartoon, like Steamboat Willie, but shot through a late 60s mentality, and another absolute gem. Then we get into, so there are September 1968 recording sessions that flesh out this album. Harry had recorded some stuff for I want to get this right. No, I take that back. Those were earlier. Those were in like July of '68 that he recorded the stuff for the Skidoo soundtrack. So I don't want to fully commit that this was relative to the Skidoo sessions. But the September '68 stuff, Rick Gerard is still around, but this does post-date the recording of his second album, so or Aerial Ballet. And so, but we have Open Your Window, and this has the Rick Gerard touch, though it does note that it was remixed by Nilsson. But yeah, so that bass line, that guitar, that little beautiful lilting jazz guitar all the way over on the left speaker, I guess that would be, and then Harry's voice. And Open Your Window is sort of a cousin to Sleep Late, My Lady Friend. Absolutely stunning. One of the most gorgeous vocal performances ever, but certainly with Harry. But again, Harry has nothing but gorgeous vocal performances. But that melody, and again, we're in some sort of cast iron 1940s balladry. This is oh my god, this is just like bedrock stuff. This should be a standard. I mean, it's just so totally gorgeous, and this stunning momentary glimpse, this picture, this flashback to this intense love affair. Oh my god. And like the intoxication of infatuation. My god, what a potent image. And he does it. I mean, this song is 2 minutes and 8 seconds. It covers so much ground. And it is so goddamn gorgeous and sensual and seductive. And this is, I don't even want to say it's a love song. It's an infatuation song, you know, where you get to, this is like the first couple times you're with the girl and you can't believe you're getting with her and getting to be together, and you're finding things out about each other. And oh my god, you like that movie too, and oh, you do that too, like all of that stuff. This is just, my god, what an evocation of having your head spinning around from somebody else. And even then, even in the middle of all of this beauty and this whirlwind of emotions and excitement and the possibilities, Harry throws in the best joke. I love it so much. It's so playful. Because that's the thing about Harry, and that's part of the thing about Harry's humor that's so wonderful, is his humor is not sour, and it is not at the expense of the audience. It's clever, but it's not it's never ever contemptuous of the audience. And the fact that he just throws in this completely left field, you and we could be happy alone in a tent. Think of the money we'd save on rent. And that, it like, saying that to a girl and her like laughing at it because she's like, oh my god, you are so, like, who are you? And you know, and she is beguiled and charmed, and it's this moment of being beguiled in a beguiling song. My god, oh my god. 2 minutes and 8 seconds, and he creates, this is a little movie in the bigger movie of the album. Unbelievable, an absolute fucking little masterpiece. Like, oh my god. And that's Harry. It's this miniature that all of a sudden contains this world in it. You're looking through this apartment window, and oh my god, and you're watching this real life thing play out. Absolutely incredible. But I wouldn't, of course, do that because I'm not a peeping Tom. So, you know, stop it, you perverts. I know what you're thinking. Anyway, so then we go into ultimate beauty. We go into Harry's cover of Mother Nature's Son. And Mother Nature's Son is, when I think of Paul, this is one of the songs. Funnily, this and Martha, My Dear. I love Paul's rock and roll stuff. I mean, Paul's one of the great rock and rollers. He has one of the great rock and roll voices of all time. I love Paul. I know I love all of Paul's talents. I love all of the major songs that everybody else loves. But the two, for some reason, that are the closest to my heart, I really don't know why, but Martha, My Dear, that piano intro to Martha, My Dear, that I don't know, every time since I was 14 years old, for some reason. And then Mother Nature's Son. I don't know. Mother Nature's Son might be my favorite thing that Paul ever did. It might be my single favorite thing. I don't know. My God. What? Music doesn't really get more gorgeous than that. And here's Harry doing it. And Perry he doesn't try and reinvent the wheel. He sticks really close to the arrangement. And the orchestrations interestingly echo what George Martin does. The way that I've thought about this is, if you're looking at if Mother Nature's Son, as recorded by the Beatles on the White Album, November 22nd, 1968, is this beautiful painting, right? And it's this definitive painting shot, or it painted from the perspective, like the POV is like you're looking at this scene that Paul has created, right? This is almost like a photograph from this angle. So it's the same scene, it's the same elements, but it's just a slightly different angle, and the coloring is different because maybe it's a photograph, not a painting. But of the same scene. And Harry very much shadows the performance and the melody. He doesn't throw in wild stuff. But then it gets to that wordless section, and Harry just multi-tracks himself, and it's a precursor to what he does so gorgeously on the Moonbeam song. Oh my God. Maybe he sort of tops Paul in that. The do 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 do. Like, fucking hell. That is, oh my God. And Harry manages to somehow capture the same, it's maybe even more pastoral feeling in, I'm not saying it tops what the Beatles did. That's ridiculous. But it's this beautiful cousin to it. And boy, does it fit on this album, because the pensive melancholia and the rainy day atmosphere and the out of timeness. Whoa, my God, this is deep, beautiful, gorgeous stuff. So then we move, we have a whole jump cut over to Fairfax Rag, and this is where we get into one of the most unique things about this album. We get into the Bill Martin songs. Bill Martin, I don't know that much about Bill Martin, but Bill Martin was really cool. He wrote All of Your Toys for the Monkees. He wrote some amazing songs. So I think he's really cool. And so we get Fairfax Rag, and Fairfax Rag is, it's hard to believe that these songs weren't written with Harry. Like, they're so, like, the sensibility is so strong. Like, God, this is all of a piece. God, this whole album is so weirdly seamless. So, Mother Nature's Son, Fairfax Rag, and the next song, City Life, are all, again, from January and February of '69. But Fairfax Rag is another strange, it's the inversion of the cocksure, I'm a radical sort of posture of the Fugs doing all right. This is the outcast, the guy trying to pose as straight, trying to function in the straight world, but maybe he doesn't actually have a job. He's trying to get a job. He's trying to make some sort of deal or some sort of hustle happen. But again, kind of like Open Your Window, this is it's 2 minutes 14, and it is this deep, potent evocation of a guy who is a complete ne'er-do-well. He's maybe getting to the opposite end of his youth. His youth is fading away, and he's got to make something happen. I have to imagine that maybe this song could have been a contender for Midnight Cowboy, because boy, does it share in that sort of outsider in the city mentality. And then the musical setting and the arrangement, George Tipton really, really going for it beautifully. We're out of the 40s-ness of Puppy Song, but this is more just straight like ragtime, and not in some, what's the word, not in any sort of novelty way, because it's all part of the potency of the storytelling and what you're seeing in these scenes in your mind. You could picture the guys, the character's suit that doesn't really quite fit. You can picture that his hair is a little too long. Maybe he's got mutton chops, and everybody else is maybe just growing out their first sideburns down to here. And the breakfast crowd is already gone, and the only people still in the diners are maybe the older folks and just the cops, and things are starting to thin out as the morning rush, as people actually go to their jobs. And this guy is getting more conspicuous and more self-conscious by the second. It is absolutely, absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it's the musical jumps, incredible, incredible. And then we go from that into an even more evocative. We go into city life. So now it's taking, the album is taking on real thematic weight because Fairfax Rag is in the city, is specific to the city, and this maybe pulls the camera back further. And city life is, especially as the song goes on, because it starts off as melancholic and meditative, and by the end, Harry has made his voice gruffer. He's up in the high mellifluous tones early on, and he gets lower and gruffer, and he gets into sort of almost like on the waterfront, I could have been a contender territory. But even before that, there's this great jump where, speaking of ragtime, where it's almost like there's a quick jump cut to like a flashback where it's almost like pre-gold room in the gold room scene in The Shining, and that's when we get into the final section of the song where it really is this like I could have been a contender territory with like embittered strings, and then the whole thing sort of goes out of time. It almost sounds like the record is warped, but not really. It again, just super evocative, and what a song. And Bill Martin's melodic sensibility and his lyrical sensibility meshes so well with what Harry is doing. It's hard, it's so, I always have to check the writing credits because it's so hard to believe that Harry did write these as well. But my God, what a seamless, masterful, incredible side of music, and just glorious. So, but we come to the end of side one, and next up we flip the record over. Okay, so side two opens with Mornin' Glory Story. That's morning as in morning. This is the CD version from the box set. One of the other great things about the box set is they do beautiful recreations of the vinyl albums, little mini Japan release-worthy mini creations, even down to recreating the record labels. Again, it's an exemplary box set. Can't recommend it enough. So, Mornin' Story Glory, again, weirdly continues this strange ne'er-do-wells demamond of New York City thing. And but this is another one from the September 68 sessions. And again, Rick Gerard, I mean, I'm a big Rick Gerard fan. That guy was fucking incredible. So again, really beautiful, tasteful George Martin string arrangement, something straight out of kind of Eleanor Rigby, but like that level of tastefulness, that level of thoughtfulness. The song, this is one of Harry's, beautiful. Again, little short story, lost girl in the city, struggling, not doing very well. Again, another, it's just a little over 2 minutes of another quick, potent evocation, another scene in the city. And, Harry, the side two opens with Harry mostly singing in his lower register, and to really beautiful effect. And it's interesting, when Harry plays it totally straight, because he's really good at it, and he's really good at putting it across. And it just, again, absolutely beautiful. And again, adding thematic and textural depth to this album, and giving another, just again another scene in these sort of stories of the city, but also people sort of outside the culture, but not in the counterculture, and also people, and I think we'll sort of get to this, people reckoning with their past, and how the past has informed their present and their attitudes towards the future. Which then leads into Best song that Harry wrote for this album? Maybe. So we're back to January, February 69. George Tipton, right there with Rick Gerard in terms of tastefulness. I mean, again, this is even more of a standard than Open Your Window. I mean, this is, or should be more of a, this is absolutely heartbreaking. This is a devastating portrait of a relationship as it disintegrates into dust, and the guy cannot hold on to it, and it is just brutal, and because it's so heartbreaking, and so, you know, the thing about when I talked about John and Paul, you know, I think people like John Lennon and Lou Reed and Bob Dylan, they're more song form people. They are more song people. Whereas I think the difference with and what I identified as more miniaturist, I think Brian Wilson, Harry, and Paul are more musical thinkers as opposed to song thinkers. They're more melodic thinkers. And I've always thought of Neil Young as weirdly the gene splice somehow between both. Neil Young is one of the only people who's a melodic thinker and a lyrical thinker, or a song form thinker at the same time, and Neil sort of oscillates between these two things throughout his work. But Harry's use of melody and his drawn out melodies, and then that unbelievable voice. I mean, this is one of the greatest voices ever. That should be way obvious by now. And the pleading, but the temperament, that where he's different from John is he doesn't have John's anger or bitterness, or if he does, which I sort of think he does, but it's flattened into, or compressed into, sadness, and this pleading sadness, and this sort of well of sadness. And the difference, I guess, in that sense also between John and Harry is John's voice was somehow flattened out by the weight of his emotions, whereas Harry somehow flips that around and is able to use the expressiveness of his voice, but the songwriting gets sort of flattened out by the weight of emotions, and what carries it then is the strength of the melodies, and his ability to shape-shift song forms and create these unbelievable fleeting moments that just come out of nowhere. And the song, again, kind of like Puppy Song, it comes in swinging when he finally gets to the, if you want to hurt me, laugh at me, but don't desert me. Jesus Christ, what the where did that come from? And then kind of also in the Puppy Song, it also becomes again about relating to generations, because it's not, there's problems with her, but it's problems with the mother-in-law, problems with her family. And so out of nowhere, you sort of have these tiers of meaning that sort of emerge, and that the pain and the sadness being expressed is then sort of compounded by this, because it's a bigger problem than just her, or like him having a roving eye or something like that. And the arrangement is absolutely gorgeous. This is probably the peak of the album. What a motherfucker. Like, it's just so devastating. And Harry does that. I mean, my God, he's good at it. And then we whipsaw over again. Now, this is from September of 67, so I think this was from the sessions for Aerial Ballet. I might be wrong. Don't get uppity if I'm wrong. But so we're back to Rick Gerard territory, and we get the 1 minute and 5 second, again, weird, potent sketch. Outsiders in the city, people with no sense of place and time other than in a densely populated urban area, and that's marching down Broadway, a peculiar post-war, almost like 1940s, after D-Day, we brought the boys home portrait that is really quizzical, and I don't even know. It's such an odd song, and it's such an odd sketch. And again, you see these people, you can see their odd facial expressions that you cannot really read, as there's maybe like 5 or 6 of them who have somehow found each other, and they are marching down Broadway together for purposes that normal people would be bemused by. Maybe these are people who are on their day pass from a well-run, humanely run local facility for those who have mental issues. I don't know. It is odd. And then even odder is that sort of whistling fade out that brings to mind the odd eccentricities and underpinnings of sadness in some of those quieter moments on the White Album. Really, really, really amazing. And for such a twee, almost like novelty song, it isn't a novelty song because it is such a quizzical statement. And then especially coming right after Maybe like that. And then the album sort of reaches its, I guess, sort of thematic peak. We get The Lord Must Be in New York City. Jan Feb, 1969. Harry had written this song for Midnight Cowboy. They already had the Fred Neil version of Everybody's Talkin'. And Harry just went and recorded this song. But what he did is he used Everybody's Talkin' as like a ready-made or a palimpsest that he puts his own text over. And it's a great song. It doesn't maybe have necessarily the pathos of Everybody's Talking or the world weariness, but in the context of this album, it sort of gives these characters, wow, maybe things sort of work out for these people. Maybe the guy in Fairfax Rag does get the job or does make the deal or whatever. And maybe all these people are going to be able to pay rent for the next couple months. Maybe they worked out their problems with their in-laws. Who knows? Really, really, really quizzical stuff, but beautiful, melodically resonant, and strangely optimistic. It's sort of the mirror version of, in so many ways, of Everybody's Talking. Brilliant. And again, so creative, because who else but Harry would do that, and does it without the wink to the camera. He just sort of recreates his biggest hit in a total inversion of it, and to brilliant effect. And that's sort of it for the Out of Time, reconciling generations in the city and the cityness and the urbanness. And we go into another circle within a circle, that the album is just sort of about the past and pastness. And so all of the other things sort of fall away. We're back to nobody cares about the railroads anymore, but in a completely different way. And that's where we get the Nilsson and Bill Martin, finally, collaboration Rainmaker. The closest thing to rock and roll on the album. Great drum sound, but piano-led, and not a lot of guitars, and almost sort of washed out guitars. What it almost prefigures, in a way, is the sound of After the Gold Rush. It's amazing. And we're into American myth territory, and we're into the Midwest, and we're into the Midwest in like the 1910s and medicine and minstrel and medicine shows, and strength tonic and confidence men on the railroads. A fascinating song, and beautiful story song. And Harry sings it. The DNA of the rock and roll explosion of Jump Into the Fire, the latent version of Jump Into the Fire, is here. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful and an amazing song. But again, that we're now sort of another layer in, and we're now sort of in the past. We're now sort of in the sepia toned photo, and this is like the time of like Bob Fitzsimmons being the heavyweight champion of the world, and again, we're even further out of time, and that leads into the next song, his cover of Mr. Bojangles. Now, Mr. Bojangles, I didn't know was a song as a child. I had an uncle who would get a bit stroppy at weddings and would do this very bizarre. He would find girls who were too shy to dance, or a little awkward, or a little ungainly, perhaps even maybe a little homely, and he would go and find them, and it was a bit tiddly, and he would do this dance that was sort of like a version of the crane dance the crane kick at the end of The Karate Kid, where he'd put his arms out and he would hop on one foot and flap his arms. And it was highly comical. And so my mom, I'm 8 years old, I don't know. My mom would call him Mr. Bojangles. And we thought that it was the most hysterical thing ever that ever was. And so when I finally heard the song, and then I knew that the guy, because the house I grew up in, when I say it was a conservative household, it was the late 80s, and my parents would watch the Lawrence Welk Show. Boy, what does that tell you? So that was how I grew up. And there was the tap dancer who I thought his name was Mr. Bojangles. I never knew that it was even a song. So when I first heard the song, I initially thought it was in fact a novelty song. I didn't know that it was a tragedy. I didn't know that it was supposed to have that it was a sad song and the sad story song. But Harry goes even further down into the myths and into the demimonde, but again, deeper into, I guess, the demimonde of the pastness, and he does this beautiful understated reading of Mr. Bojangles, and the Tipton's orchestrations. This is probably his peak with orchestrations, and is it Larry Knechtel's bass? The counterpoints of that are absolutely gorgeous, and he brings meaning and melancholia and sadness to Mr. Bojangles, and in a weird way, this album is sort of again, circles within circles. It's sort of like fake outs, because I guess The Lord Must Be in New York City is sort of like the end of the album. Rainmaker could be the end of the album. Mr. Bojangles could be the end of the album, and it's sort of thematic, some of its thematic concerns. Each of these could, Marching Down Broadway could be the end of the album. And yet we hit the actual end of the album, and prefiguring, because circles within circles, prefiguring the next album, Nilsson Sings Newman, we get a Randy Newman cover. We get Simon Smith and the Amazing Dancing Bear. This, again, odd, strange. We're back to the demimonde or outsiders of New York City, but again, not countercultural and not particularly subversive. Just simply people who just don't fit, and awkward people at the church bake sale sort of world of this album. And Harry sings it in a completely different way than the rest of the album. His use of voice on this album is so stunning, and his voice really is the signature instrument. And it's this quirky, eccentric song about being accepted in one aspect of it, being accepted into high society, but then as a novelty. And again, so odd, but weirdly sort of optimistic and feel good, and sort of the sadness goes, the clouds part, the sun comes out, and then it has this like double time shuffle off to Buffalo ending, this very self-consciously like old-timey ending, and you can see the stage lights and the footlights on the stage, and there's crowd noise that all of a sudden it's a show, and that's the ending. What an odd ending for an album, but a perfect ending. Circles within circles. It just keeps going. And circular, it echoes this odd relationship with this boy and his amazing dancing bear, circles you right back to the puppy song. It begins and ends with man's relationship to the animals, among other things. Amazing, isn't it? So anyway, on that note, that wraps things up here. So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I will be back soon enough with another episode. I've got, like I said, I've got them all scheduled out. I'm very excited. We've picked up some more subscribers. It looks like I think we've gone over 275 now. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Tell your friends. And, please, if you enjoyed this and you are not already subscribed, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Harry Nilsson. And like I said, I hope you enjoyed this. I'll be back soon enough with another exciting video. And until then, bye! Wait, what? You should have known that here at Rich Talks Records, we're of course going to cover bonus tracks. Leaving aside on the bonus tracks for both Harry and the session discs, there are 3 session discs in the box set. Wealth of outtakes. This is Andrew Sandoval. He doesn't mess around. He does the real archival work. So anyway, on Harry we have the single version of I Will Take You There from the Skidoo soundtrack. Also the solo demo of Garbage Can Ballet. What that leaves us then is Waiting from the movie Jenny, which is a very nice little meditative mood piece. Not a major song, but cool enough. Certainly good for a movie soundtrack. We have the single mix of Rainmaker, which I think they very much got it right on the album. The Morning Glory Story single mix, which they really, really got right on the album. This has extra musical elements that I think really detract from the story being told. Then we have Harry doing an ad for the movie, for the album Harry, which is cool, and it's a radio ad of its time, so it's cool, not essential but interesting. And then some outtakes for radio spots for the Voices of Vista, which was a volunteer service, and so it's just some run-throughs of some copy for that. So yeah, that is that. I'll cover Skidoo maybe some other time, but I think it's just slightly outside the realm of this video. On here, we, again, leaving aside the Skidoo vocal tracks of Cast and Crew, Garbage Can Ballet, and I Will Take You There. We have You Are Here from July of '68, which was recorded the day that Yoko and John opened the You Are Here exhibit, and they had agreed that they would write a song together called that. Instead, they both had separate songs called You Are Here. And it's okay. The refrain, though, is wound up in another Nilsson song, and for the life of me, I can't place it. I tried looking it up, and I couldn't find it. So in the comments, let me know. Then we have Girlfriend, which wound up being rewritten into Best Friend for the Courtship of Eddie's Father, to much greater effect. We have an alternate version of Wasting My Time, Tremendous. That's the best thing here. That's from July of '68. That could have made the album, I think, and would have been to great effect. We have an orchestrated version of Rainmaker. They got it right for the album big time. We have an alternate take of Open Your Window, which is a tremendous vocal performance, but I think only after you've heard the original. There's a lot of inversions of the melody and singing around the melody. So I think you need the original one to sort of be totemic in order to then have versions of it. And then finally, Postcard from Jan Feb in '68, which is a pretty rough run through. Interesting, but pretty rough run through. So yeah, so that is this. Interesting, not necessarily essential, other than Wasting My Time is pretty incredible. So anyway, so this is the real end of the video. If you enjoyed this, please like and comment and subscribe if you already haven't. Anyway, I will be back soon enough. This is the time for real with another exciting video. See you very soon. Until next time. Bye!
Just finished watching Rich Talks Records. Now the anticipation for the next episode begins.